Welcome to another episode of the After School Club with myself, Max Pembleton. Today we're joined by Steve Quinn, and Steve is the founder of Corporate Smarts, and he works with businesses to really inspire and motivate the team and individuals within the team. Some of the things he works on: mindset, behaviours, leadership, development, strategy, transformation, innovation, and much more. He's certainly inspired a number of people within our company, and I welcome you to this episode. Enjoy. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. How are we doing?
Oh, great. Thanks, Max. I
Good.
really appreciate you having me, buddy.
Good, no problem. You're very welcome. I love the positivity already. And you've travelled from Northampton today.
Yeah.
And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the session we've literally just come out of with the team upstairs.
Awesome.
Absolutely loved it. I think a lot of them have taken many positives from that. And that was just an hour session. So imagine what you could do in a few, or a day, or a week, or a year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Thanks,
can you just tell us, and for those that are listening,
yeah,
what is it you do? Because I think a lot of people will think, okay, Steve's a coach. What does he coach?
Yeah.
Just tell us.
How does he coach?
Yeah, what do you coach?
Great way to start. And look, I think you got a really great group of people up there. Some fascinating characters. So what do I do? So I coach, I train, I consult. That's the easiest way of really explaining it. On the coaching side, it's performance, right? So that can be performance anywhere, in work and in life, in business and in life. And my purpose is to help people level up by as little as 1%. And those
in any area,
because most of the things that hold people back that I found, I used to think I was fascinated by what drove people, when in reality, what I realized was most of the drivers tend to be the same. What holds people back from doing what it is that they really want to do? And that's the bit that I help people with. So the interventions that I get involved in differ entirely. So something like what I did upstairs, where I call that a workshop, or a lecture, or a class, as Manish called it, something like that. But the key to that is having actionable breakout sessions where people are getting the pen to paper. So they're getting those money thoughts out of their head onto paper that will create actions. And then providing that kind of really thought-provoking content that is scientifically based, fundamentally aimed at helping people get better at whatever it is that they want to get better in, right? So for your team, it could be, leveling up on building client relationships, closing deals, or whatever it might be. For other teams, it might be getting back to basics, right? Actually, how do we generate leads? How do we reach out to clients? So the specific areas that I help in are sales, leadership, performance, but fundamentally under all of that is personal development.
Brilliant.
Personal development leads to professional development. And that's where I think a lot of corporates that I meet get it wrong. They're just looking at the behavior and upskilling the professional element without addressing the person underneath it and behind it all.
It's so interesting just listening to you speak, and how your perception of the mind is compared to maybe the everyday person. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I've not met anyone that if you ask them honestly, do you want to get better? The answer's no. And I think if the answer's no, they're probably lying, and they just don't want to admit it. Maybe it's an ego thing or a confidence thing.
Yeah. Fear thing.
A fear thing, yeah, absolutely. And, for me, absolutely, I always want to get better. And you mentioned level up. I think if you said to everyone, I can make you level up, do you want to? The answer is yeah.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned corporate there as well, and the company's called Corporate Smarts.
It is.
Can you tell us how that came about then, and is it just the corporate world that you're operating in?
Yeah. So I'll answer the last bit first. Not just corporates. So I do work with large corporates, but then I work with smaller businesses, startups, entrepreneurs in terms of coaching. And Corporate Smarts came about because I spent 20 years in corporate banking. And one of the things that I realized along the way was that a majority of adults will spend a majority of their lives working in a large corporate environment. You are never taught some of the key fundamental skills to help you succeed in that corporate environment. And I used to talk about it for years, right? Oh, these are just corporate smarts, right? Influencing, it's just a corporate smart. Communication,
So you would always refer to them as corporate smarts.
Yeah. While I was doing it, and I was working with teams and stuff, and then I was driving down to see some friends, and I was having a call with a really, really great friend of mine, and he often coaches me, and I mentioned the corporate smarts bit, and I was still, full-time employment, and he said, mate, maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's your business, corporate smarts. And it was just a light bulb.
Yeah.
So I pulled over, hazard lights on, and I registered the company there and then.
Did you?
Yeah, I bought the domain, and I was like, it's not out there. And when I started searching for it, there was nothing akin to what corporate smarts are. And it's evolved, right? Like any business, you've got to embed evolution into your business in order to help it grow, but to stay relevant.
And how long have you had the company?
This is going up to the end of year 3. So leaving that kind of banking career behind, I remember sitting at a board table not long after I'd set the business up, and I got introduced to an HR director, and the MD said, look, what you do seems kind of, city-ish. How can it help us? And they were based in Reading. And my answer was pathetic, to be quite honest. I remember beating myself up for a couple of days afterwards, and I realized, what's the answer that I should have given? And that's that every business is a people business. And what I forgot in that moment was, it doesn't matter whether it's city-based or whether it's a construction company, it's people that make the business, right? Your business is a living organism made of people. So I developed it, and it was just very rough and ready. I had a very simple plan to get it going because, again, I realized over a 20-year career, I had lots of great ideas, analysis paralysis. And also I was afraid. I was afraid of what might happen if I start this business. How could we still have the same lifestyle? All of those kinds of challenges.
It's scary. It's a big jump.
It is. Yeah. It is. And so, when you've got a young family and stuff, so the real question is, how do you use the corporate smarts that you've gained? These are the questions that I was asking myself in order to help other people. So, I go back to purpose, and the purpose that we have at Corporate Smarts is to help people develop. That's it. We coach, we train, we transform people. Yeah. And in the last 3 years, the hundreds, if not thousands of people that I've worked with, you see some incredible stories. Like, people will just reach out to me and go, oh, you came to our talk like 6 months ago, and I wanted to thank you because this has happened since then. And I mean, it gives me goosebumps, right? Like,
that's why you do what you do.
That's why I do what I do, man. That's the measure of success for me. A lot of people will say, success is about money. Yes, all of that is great. But actually, if you don't love what you do, you've only got one life. What are you wasting your time doing that for if you don't love it? So, I continue doing the stuff that I love. And I love being in a room full of people, like we were just upstairs. And I got that goosebump moment when someone asked me, how do you do this? How do you shift your mindset, right? What do I do in order to move from a negative to a positive mind shift? And I just got those goosebumps because I was like, that's the question. Those are the kind of questions that people should be asking.
That's when they're engaged, they're thinking about it. Yeah. And they want to shift.
And they want to get better. My daughter told me probably about 4 years ago, she gave me a quote, and she was like, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. Right. And I was like, who's this kid?
Say it again.
You're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. And when I'm working with people, I say, which one are you? So some people who don't know, one of your team upstairs said, how do you address a lack of self-awareness or self-awareness with someone who's not self-aware? Maybe that's a great way to start. Which one are you? Are you green and growing? Or are you ripe and rotting? Because you're just stagnating in your comfort zone, right? So Corporate Smarts came about. And why it came about was because I saw that there was a bit of a gap, right? Especially in the corporates that I would worked within, but also the clients that I'd worked with, right? I've worked with thousands of businesses over the years, and there seemed to be this gap between professional performance and personal development, right? And I was like, how do you bridge that gap? And all of it is pretty much psychological, and built around mindset, built around overcoming fears, built around the stories that we tell ourselves. So from there on, it was just a case of reconnecting with my network. There's an incredible guy called Steve Rush. He's a chief learning officer at MSCI now, but he was instrumental in introducing me to a couple of people and actually sharing some of his IP with me that helped me get on my path. And the thing I love to do most is my ideas down on paper and then share it with other people and find out, does it work? Get some sort of response on whether my fear to growth model works or whether my discipline equation works and all of that kind of stuff. So always looking at tweaking and experimenting with the tools that I'm developing, but also bringing in tools that work that are going to help people just move forward.
Yeah, I think fear is a massive, massive part of what we're speaking about. And actually something that frustrates me a little bit, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong saying this, but I've always kind of thought, I've lived in Australia, I've lived in America, and I always come back to England and there seems to be a mentality which has a bit of a negative undertone.
Yeah.
And, we speak about these kind of things and mindset shifts and positivity, and people will roll their eyes, people will find it cringy, people will find it corny. And I just think, why?
Yeah.
And actually, having worked in education for the past 14 years, I really, really think, and I've got a question coming up here, think that for me, it starts with your upbringing and school. And you mentioned something earlier about what is taught in schools, and we're talking about corporate world here.
Yeah.
And almost retraining people's brains in the corporate world. If you could change something in school that is being taught, what would you change and what would you teach?
Mate, that's a great question. For me, it would be my parenting philosophy. I'd like to map that into schools, which is to not teach people what to think, teach them how to think, right? Because most people that you'll ever meet don't really think for themselves. And what I mean by that is kids are taught how to memorize stuff to sit exams, right? And to follow the rules. So if I was to be blunt about this, I would say that schools are conditioning factories. And listen, I loved my high school education. I loved the education that I have. And I'm immensely grateful for bones off, right? Crazy hours and everything. And they're working within the confines that are given to them. I'm not here saying I want to change the whole education system, but what I would say is it's changing how people think. So move from what to how. And it was interesting, right? Because the lady that we know in common is the interim at my daughter's high school, just by pure coincidence. And the evening that I met her was my daughter's open evening, right? And it was amazing. It was embarrassing almost, because my daughter's just got a great attitude to learning. But also we handpicked which teachers we wanted to see, where we knew it was going to be kind of positive.
Yeah.
And when we came out of the school, my daughter said one thing to me. She said, listen, we need people like you in the school, because most people don't even try. They don't even try. Yeah. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, they just don't even try. They've got the opportunity to, but they don't even try. And I said, so what does that mean for you? She says, well, it means success. Because if you try just a little bit, you're going to do well.
You're getting recognized.
So attitude is a massive thing. So, a lot of companies and senior leaders that I speak to now who are employing a younger generation are saying to me, listen, there's maybe this sense of entitlement with a small minority or a majority of them. And it's really about shifting some of that. So, what's lacked through the education system, and, it's not up to teachers to change this, but what's lacked there doesn't get addressed when people go into the corporate environment, right? The conditioning at home is another thing. And that's really difficult, right? Because you never know what's going on behind closed doors. And you never know until you're an adult how it affects you, right? So like my dad was in construction. He would get us up on weekends at like 5, 6 a.m. and literally he'd wake us up with a glass of water over our heads. But that was his mentality. And what I didn't realize until I was probably into my 30s, having a conversation with my brother and my mum about it, was that discipline that he taught us actually was probably the most powerful gift he could have given us. Because, my brother's doing really well. I say relatively, I'm doing really well. I'm happy. To me, that's a great measure of success. So I think that, that element of discipline, which we touched on earlier as well, that's massively important. They teach it in school. I'm just not sure that it's taught in the right kind of way. So for me, answering your question, it would be moving away from teaching kids what to think about, teaching kids how to think. And the biggest challenge within that, because I've been into schools, I've been into colleges, talking specifically about financial education, I've had teachers in the room who were like, I never knew about this. These teachers are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Yeah. And I'm talking about budgeting, I'm talking about balance sheets, I'm talking about other ways of generating revenue. And they're never taught this. And they're taught how to think about, trying to strive for financial freedom. Yeah. They're never taught about the fundamentals of what it means to be a successful, which
taxes and mortgages. And I don't ever remember learning anything like that in school. I had a great school experience. Yeah. But I kind of feel like there was so much where I just had to learn it. Yeah. Outside of school. And family, of course, helped, friends helped. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of young people that don't necessarily have that network around them. And it could be taught in schools. And I think something that I'm quite passionate about is resilience. And you mentioned discipline a few times there. How to be disciplined, but also how to be resilient, because in life, there's things are going to happen, and they're not going to be good. So how do you bounce back? How do you stay resilient? Yeah. And I think it's an individual thing as well, and people have their different ways of dealing with it. Yeah. But overall, there's probably similarities with the people that are successful and resilient, and the people that are not.
Yeah, there's definitely a correlation there, I would say, because one of my favorite quotes is easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. It might be the other way around. But, I refer to it upstairs with the team, and the easy choice is to give up, right? I was talking to someone earlier about over 80% of sales that are closed require at least 5 follow-ups. And a lot of salespeople just don't do it. Mm-hmm. They just won't follow up. They won't.
Think about it all the time.
Yeah. And it's about proactive, polite persistence is what I talk about. Proactive, polite persistence. But that doesn't just apply to sales, right? As I was talking about, sales is influence, sales is change. It applies to, I remember when I met my wife, right? The night we met, my buddy Big Will, we're on our way home, and he said to me, mate, I'm not being funny. She's way too fit for you. She's never going out.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, it was kind of that. And I was like, really? Okay. And I would say that I was politely persistent with my follow-up. So a week and a half later, I remember calling him from like Earls Court Station, and I said, "This is where I'm going. I'm on my second date with the girl that I met in the club." And he was, well, I won't say it on the podcast, but it was an expletive, and he was like, "Well done, mate." Yeah. I said, "You're probably not." I said, "If things work out, you may not see me for a few years."
Yeah, yeah.
But it is about that, and that's a massive choice, right? In terms of, and again, I don't think that's ever really addressed, like who you choose to spend your time with, and who you choose to invest your life with, right? So one of the biggest choices that we'll make, and I only realize this because I've got an amazing wife, is who you end up spending your life with, right? Because they can either make that journey incredible or make it absolutely horrendous. So that's probably another thing is around the interpersonal skills. Like the social element of school is fundamental, but I don't think it's probably addressed enough in terms of how to help each other improve and encourage one another. I don't think school is there to help breed leaders. And I don't mean leaders in terms of business leaders. I mean, everyone's a leader because everyone's always influencing someone. Mm-hmm. Perhaps that could be addressed as well. But I think there's a lot of areas, but it would be how to think. Yeah. Think for yourself.
Yeah. But before my next question, I just want you to remind us actually of a quote that you told the team upstairs. Stat more than a quote, to be honest. About Roger Federer, the tennis player.
Yeah, and you know what? I only learned this recently. I did a training session last week with a sales team, and one of the guys emailed me and he said, "This is a great resilience reminder. So Roger Federer won 83% of his tennis matches in his career, but he only won 54% of the points he ever played. So that meant he lost 46% of the time, right? And then when you look at other world-class legends like a Michael Jordan or a...
Have you seen that advert? That was my next thing I was going to say about the Michael Jordan advert. And he says, I've failed over and over again in my career, and that's why I succeed.
Mate, actually give me goosebumps, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, there's so many great quotes from MJ, but that's true as well. And then you look at someone like right now, Lewis Hamilton, right? The most winningest driver of all time. And he's about to jump teams, and he's nearly 40.
Yeah.
Now, 5-10 years ago, people would have written him off. But now there's this, and he has done nothing but lose for the last couple of seasons. Yet he's still we rise, as he says, right? So yeah, there's definitely something in that statistic around. Look, you don't need to win every point. You're never gonna win every round.
Just keep going.
Just keep going, because you know what? The next win be just around the corner.
Yeah.
I shared something with leaders in my network. It will be on my LinkedIn on Monday. But my mum passed last August, and we were going around the house, and on her fridge, she had this amazing poem called Don't Quit. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful poem, but fundamentally, the message is simple. Don't quit. Unless you know that you're on a hiding to nowhere, unless you're so deep in the hole, right, that the only way out is to quit. Just keep going. You know, over the last few years, the resilience bit is a great shout. The last few years, there's definitely been months where I've been like, it would be easy for me to go back into employment, go and find a job if anyone's willing to employ me now. And I sat down with my wife to talk about it, and I was, telling her about this opportunity, and she just said to me, "But you'll lose your freedom." And my wife is, she doesn't say many things, but when she does say it, it's hard hitting. And I was like, yeah,
Stuck with you. Yeah.
Oh, let's keep going.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh no, what have I said?" But she told me exactly what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
So don't quit.
Yeah, love it. And you must have always had this mentality, inside of you, even when you were working in the financial sector. What I want to know is, was there someone growing up or someone that made you all of a sudden flick a switch in your head, teacher, mentor, famous person, someone that was an inspiration to you, and that I guess kind of that drive or gave you that drive in the first place?
Yeah. Shout. My parents, my brother, for sure. My dad was an eternal optimist. He was a hard worker. And, he struggled through life. But his work ethic just was, was in my brothers and my DNA. And in my mum, completely opposite to my dad. My dad was this construction, thin and blind in, Irish guy, charming as you like, amazing man, super strong. And my mum was this incredibly eloquent, spoke the Queen's English, got a master's degree when I was 6, my brother was 9, chartered surveyor, but they had some things in common, not a lot. One of them was construction and building. So they ended up building a dream house in Ireland. But those two, like my dad was relentless. So that persistence, that resilience, that was there. And, I still, and I don't know if you ever find this, but I still find myself saying things aloud that my dad said to me as a kid. Yeah. Like I'd stub my toe and be like, you're Aegish in a rubbish Irish accent. But then my mum's pragmatic wisdom and assurance to believe in yourself. Because no one else is going to believe in you apart from you. You don't have to have a religion, but as long as you believe in yourself, that's the key. I remember talking about that when I was about 12 years old, and I got attacked by the kids in my class for being arrogant, and I was like, I don't even know what arrogant means. But what I do know is that at some point you're going to be alone, and it's going to be really hard, and no one's going to be there to bail you out apart from you. My brother always had my back, still does. And I realized at some point in my 30s that I didn't have one dad, I had 2 dads. So I had this older brother who's 3 years older, still have, and he's inspirational, right? We have our differences. It's incredible that you can be raised in exactly the same household, share the same DNA, but be so different.
It's
But
like describing me and my brother.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's the big differences there?
Yeah. The big difference is, well, my fitness and my dedication to that is one of them. We just haven't really got the same interest in that department.
Yeah.
We like a lot of similar things, and we'll watch boxing, we'll watch UFC, and we're very passionate about that. But then I will go and try, and that will inspire me, and I will go and try and implement skills from that sport into an area of my life.
Nice.
That doesn't interest him. He just likes watching it. And growing up through school, I was a good student and enjoyed school. He wasn't and didn't. Just to put it simply, we were very, very different at school.
Yeah.
We had the exact same upbringing in the same area, everything. So it is very, very strange how it can happen with siblings.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's massive, right? I know what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but I was blessed that I had an older brother who was incredibly courageous, fearless to a fault in some senses. But I would see things that he would do, and I would be like, okay, let's not do that, because that's led to this.
Right.
So I had that bit of shelter, if you will, from an older brother, but he was always there to protect me, and that was amazing as well. But it was like we would do a lot of hard stuff together, like working for my old man. And when you're a teenager, the last thing you want to be doing is getting up on a weekend after a week at school, really not sleeping great because you're a teenager. All you want to do is probably hang out with mates, go and chat to a girl. And we would be out in the cold, in the rain, shifting bricks, laying brick, whatever, right? And we were in it together. So we share a lot of that.
Yeah.
So we had each other's back. Aside from that, I had a couple of great teachers. I had a great English teacher called Andy Vipond. He gave me books. My mum asked him to give me books that were adult books to read. And that really opened my mind about the world. I had another teacher called John Cooper, who was he was Linford Christie's teacher.
Oh, wow.
Weirdly enough. And I bumped into Linford last year and had a great conversation with him. And he just trusted me with other students who had things go on in their lives that were really hard for them, and he would sit next to me and he goes, "I think you can handle this." And what I didn't realize he was talking about was emotional intelligence. And then when I get into the working world, my very first boss, he was a bank manager, Jim Gorry. He was an incredible coach, still is, right? Still in touch with him. Still ask me some of the toughest questions and some of the questions that really need to be asked that I'm not asking myself, which is incredibly powerful. But yeah, there's loads. But growing up, those were the keys. I had some great friends who I'm still friends with, who were fantastic as well, inspiring in their own ways. Right? They were all athletic in their own ways, faster than me, could jump higher than me, were better at this sport, better at that sport. So I like that because of that competition. But it also pushed me to become even better. But those are the first things that I think about. And then I fell in love with basketball when I was about 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And I just remember recording basketball show, NBA Jam, buying every VHS that I could on basketball and listening to MJ and all of these other players.
Yeah.
And, I was just more interested in that than, let's say, football or rugby. So I found my inspiration in those kind of messages. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And just going back to, motivation and that side of things, I think a lot of people listening probably aren't motivated in general, and they might describe themselves as generally not motivated. Now, I understand that we have good days, we have bad days. Some days you feel really motivated, other days you feel really unmotivated.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, how do you work with people that describe themselves as not motivated?
It's great. Great shout. So the first thing is to define it, right? So what does motivation mean to them? So it will mean different things to different people. And to me, motivation is just fleeting, right? It doesn't last. So you can get up on a Monday morning and be motivated, but can you rely on that every Monday? You just can't rely on it. The underlying factor is discipline, because discipline is the thing that will pull you through even when you're not motivated, right? Like we were talking about your training.
Yeah. So my question then is, how, if you're not motivated, do you stay disciplined? Because you know you need to become motivated, but you need to be disciplined to become motivated. But I still can't be bothered to get off the sofa. So what's the answer then?
Oh, great shout. Right. So the first thing about someone who's unmotivated, right, is what's pushing them? What's pushing them? What's holding them back? And the pain pushes to the vision pools. And most people live their lives in pain. And what I mean by that is they're just on the hamster wheel, right? And they live a life of quiet desperation. They get to a point they're like, oh, I'm just waiting for redundancy. I'm waiting for retirement. And that's no way to live, I don't think. That's the first thing. Then it's understanding what are the obstacles in the way, right? So we talk about discipline. So I formulated a discipline equation. I've not seen it out there. Put pen to paper, and I'm just working on case studies. But fundamentally, this discipline equation starts with W, what's and whys. So what do you want to achieve? What are your challenges? You start with your what's. What do you want? Why do you want it? So you start with that. And most people, when I ask them as a coach, what do you want? They don't know. I don't know. All right, well, go away and think about it. Come back to me. Or if fear and failure were taken out of the equation, what would you want? Oh, I want £1 million. Why? What are you going to do with it? What are the reasons? Want to be out of debt? Great. What else? Right. So help people form a vision of themselves in the future. Yeah. That's one thing that we probably don't do enough of in the education system. So your what's and your whys first, minus your obstacles next. And when I say obstacles, most people tend to think of the physical obstacle literally in front of them, or the market, or whatever other excuse that's completely out of their control. But what I really mean is, what's the internal obstacles? We are our biggest obstacle.
Something stopping you. What is it?
What is it? What's preventing you from moving forward? And when you peel it back, it's fear. So I break down fear into 3 categories. And it could be much broader, but fear of failure, fear of judgment, and fear of loss. So most of us fear failing. We fear effing up because we're never taught through school, right? You've got to do really well in that exam. Actually, if you don't do so well, that's not the end of the world. What do you learn from it, right? Where's the feedback and all that kind of stuff? That's the fear of failure. As we get older, fearing failure leads to a fear of judgment because we're afraid of what people will say about us.
Do you think you have to fail?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
But it's how you frame it, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's the mindset, it's the lens that we see failure through. And if you think, I failed, I can't continue, rather than I haven't failed, I haven't lost anything, what have I learned from this? So it's about that reflection piece, right? And again, most of us don't take time out, even 5 minutes a day, just to reflect on where did I mess up today and what did I learn from it?
Yeah.
There was stuff that I did upstairs that I didn't plan for it. And then there's stuff that I missed out that I planned for, but what did I learn from that, right? So fear of failure, fear of judgment, and then fear of loss. And that is loss of anything that you hold close to you and your identity. That's the fundamental bit. So the loss element is, let's say, is loss of reputation, loss of friends, loss of loved ones, loss of income, loss of business, loss of everything. Okay. It's identifying that. So when I talk to clients about this and we talk about their obstacles, they're going, I'm afraid that I'm not going to have enough money. What will that lead to? Well, it will lead to me not being able to pay the mortgage and the bills, and I'll lose everything. And I say, so you're afraid of losing everything.
Yeah.
It's not about not having enough money, is it? And they're like, oh yeah. And there's that light bulb that goes off. So those internal obstacles first. And then realizing, as I mentioned upstairs, right, the Stoic philosophy, I love going back to ancient stuff, right? When we've got problems, when I've got a problem, I want to go back to the ancient philosophers, because those fundamental human problems were around 2,500 years ago. And they're still with us here. They're still in the limbic system. So, turning the obstacle into the way. And if you were the obstacle, you are the only one who can overcome yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's figuring that out, and it's helping people figure that out. And, I spent years trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it out for myself. But helping people realize that and get past that is amazing. So it's your what's and your whys minus your obstacles times your habits. Right? So what I say is your habits create your future you. So for example, when you decided to run a marathon, to do a triathlon, what was the first thing that happened? When you were like, all right, I'm doing this triathlon, what did you do next?
I thought, can't swear on this podcast. But no, I thought, right, okay, I've never done triathlon. And then I signed up to the Ironman 70.3, to which most people said, you've never done a triathlon. And I thought, if I'm being completely honest, let's get to work. And that's kind of my mentality. And I was like, right, I need a plan. And the way I work, I have a plan. It's in front of me and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what I need to do. And regardless of how busy I am, how tired I am, if that's what I need to do to achieve that, then that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did for 6 months. I trained well. And when I came to it, in the back of my mind, I knew I could do it. And I was going to do it regardless. You know, even if I failed and I didn't make it out the swim in time, or I didn't make it off the bike in time, I was going to do everything I could to do it. And yeah, it was scary and it's a bit daunting, and I'm not the strongest swimmer, especially in the middle of an Ironman when there's people grabbing and the water's choppy. It's a scary place, but I think that's what drives me. I think, you know, that fear is what actually drives me, the fear of not doing it or being mediocre, or that's for me what drives me.
Being mediocre. Mediocrity is happiness for mediocre people, right? And clearly doing an Ironman is not mediocre. Yeah. I mean, like, hats off to you, because I could never imagine myself doing it. But what were the habits that you had to create for you to get from where you were to Ironman?
I think the biggest one was discipline for me. The biggest one was discipline, because I'm very busy with a couple of businesses, and I start early, I finish late, and then fitting it in between. For me, I had to be disciplined, and it's very, very easy to say, well, I can't fit that in today, you know, work's more important. But I just didn't let myself do that, and I just kept it. I'm very, very good at detaching the emotion and keep putting one foot in front of the other, and that's it.
Compartmentalizing.
Yeah, and just keep doing it. And I think once I get something in my head, I'm going to work towards it until I do it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I find it hard to actually break down and explain to people that don't understand.
Yeah.
David Goggins has got a good quote where he speaks about being uncommon amongst uncommon people. And that's exactly what I wanted to be honest. So
mission accomplished.
Yeah. Now on to the next mission. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm already thinking, what can it be? And for me, it leads me on to my next topic, really, of goals and having goals and goal setting.
Yeah.
And the way I work, I have to have small goals, multiple goals to work towards, because I achieve one and then straight away I'm like, right, what's next? And the Ironman is a good example, because that was for 6 months, right? I need to do this. I need to do this. I can't stop until I've done it. Yeah, I promise you, I'm going to slow down when I've done it. But the morning after, I'm already thinking, now what next? Yeah, you know, and I don't know what that is or why I think like that. But when I feel at a standstill, or there's not something to aim for, that's when I get a bit twitchy and uncomfortable within myself. Yeah. So goal setting, how do you speak to people about setting goals? What would you advise for people that maybe haven't got any goals right now, and that's what's going to help them?
Goals. Okay. Links to this next bit of the discipline equation, right? So it's the what's and the whys minus the obstacles times your habits. Because your habits create your future you, right? And even if you're not doing it every day, shifting your habits will change who you are. And then you multiply all of that by your focus. Habits are goals, right? Your whats and your whys are goals as well. But it's all about your focus as well. So, you know, where your focus goes, energy flows to. if you're focusing on the wrong things, you're going to get the wrong outcomes. If you're focusing on the right things and you're putting in the effort and the energy, you're going to get the right outcomes.
Yeah.
So in terms of goals, the first thing is, how hungry are you? You know, how hungry, and it sounds to me like you've got a hunger to improve, to do something else, to see how far you can push it. How hungry are you is always something that I'll ask people, because you can set a goal, but how hungry are you? What's the will to act in order to get there? Goal setting depends on the individual. It depends on how far out the goal is as well. But what I would say is use something really smart. An old boss of mine told me about SMART goals years ago, and I was like, use SMART goals if that's going to help you get there. But I would always say write it down and look at it frequently, because having it in your head, it's not good enough. If it stays in your head, you're dead. Yeah. The idea's dead, the goal's dead, and everything else. Having the goal that's a little bit of a stretch. So, you know, if you want to earn 100 grand a year, make your goal 200, right? If you want to do an Ironman, if you want to do a triathlon, do an Ironman instead, right? Like that sort of thing. The goals are important. Having a plan to get there is really important. And all you need to do is know your first kind of few steps, right? In order to overcome any resistance towards getting that goal. But the SMART goals is, you know, something specific, something measurable, attainable,
realistic.
Realistic, yeah, I think so.
I don't like that one.
Because you don't want it realistic. You want to stretch it.
Yeah.
And then time-based. So, again, the realistic bit, I don't know how it works in terms of your team, but let's say whatever their target is of 100%, you want to stretch that, because getting to 100% is okay. So it's like getting...
I kind of understand why you would have a realistic goal, because if it's really out there and it's just not possible, then it's a bit silly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't like the thought of it's realistic. I want to be pushing something that people didn't think I could do.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Because even if you don't get all the way there, you will have achieved way more. You would have gone way further than even not trying or going halfway, setting a very, or a not a lofty goal, a realistic goal.
Yeah. And I've listened to something as well which talks about the what if mentality.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you spoke about people naturally will think about, I guess, the negative side of that what if I fail, and
what if I lose, what if I win?
Yeah, but what if the other side of the coin?
So you're talking about like the English mentality. And again, that's a very cultural thing around, but what if it fails? What if I lose? But what if you succeed? What if you win? People don't think about that. And that's something that I talk about with people, you know, like I've got a raft of tools to help people with mindset and get them on that positive path. The what if mentality is massive, right? Goggins talks about it, and it's powerful. Yeah. And, you know, it's one of those things that I would say, especially if you're in sales, or you're about to go do something very uncomfortable for you, and you're doubting yourself, the bead sweats are rolling down your back, your heart's pounding, and, you know, maybe it's just a little bit of public speaking that you've got to do. Oh, what if they don't? What if this? What if that? Think of the opposite. Yeah. Do the opposite.
What if it goes well?
What if it goes well? What if you succeed? What if you actually enjoy this? Yeah. What if somebody values what it is that you've got to say? Again, you know, it's very easy to focus on the negative. Like, you know, when you're up talking in front of people, the person that sticks out the most is the one who's yawning. The one who's just like looks completely disinterested. Focus on those who are interested, those who are positive. In terms of goals, though, it's the systems to get you there. It's the systems and those daily habits that will get you there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, whatever my goal was set up when I set up Corporate Smarts. I mean, it was lofty from a 0 point where I was completely changing industry, identity, everything. I set myself a really lofty goal. I didn't achieve it. But what I did was I got about 80% of the way there. So year 2, I doubled it. And I was like, you know, even if I get halfway to this new goal, I've done really well. Yeah. And I didn't get year 2 and I won't get year 3, but I'm setting that unattainable goal. It's achievable. If I achieve it,
to keep you pushing.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you just rest on your laurels, right? And what it also really forces you to do is look at your systems, look at your habits, look at your focus to really give it a little bit of a jiggle. Most people don't change much about their lives, right? And, like whether it's your morning routine, I haven't been well over the last couple of months, so I've not been getting in the cold tub much. Instead, I've got an old deck chair, stuck it in the front yard because that's where the sun comes in the morning. And I'll just sit there doing my breathing exercise and stuff like that, getting a bit of sunlight in the morning. And just making that change and realizing the whole world has fallen apart. Yeah. Actually, I feel better for it. Don't get me wrong, I miss the cold tub, but it's a change that needs to happen, and that goal has changed, which is get well again.
How do you feel about? I want to relate to something that you spoke about upstairs again, actually. And first of all, I want to talk about documenting things. Because I think that can be really, really powerful. Yeah. And a couple of examples, it doesn't necessarily have to be fitness-based, it could be work-based. Right. I've more recently been renovating a house, and actually I'm documenting it every single day. And my next point, which is the bit you spoke about, when I zoom out, when I look at the last 6 months, I'm like, wow, the kitchen was like that, then it was a building site, and now it's like that. And I think the ability to change your daily habits, it may be eating, for example, let's take that as an example, and you eat healthy for a day. You look in the mirror at the end of the day, you can't see any different. You eat healthy for 6 months, you look in the mirror at the end of 6 months, you zoom out, you look back at where you were and where you are today, and it's a huge, huge difference. Can you just talk to us about the power of zooming out and what is... let's call it the zoom out mentality.
Yeah. Great shout. If in doubt, zoom out is what I talk about. And because we don't take enough time to step back and reflect on ourselves, but specifically on our progress. Just because you've been in the same job for a decade, it doesn't mean that you haven't progressed, right? Apart from when you're sitting down in your one-to-one, when you actually zooming out to look at how many points of contact have you made? How many deals have you done? All of that kind of good stuff. You're just not doing it. So for me, that zoom out mentality is essential, right? And it takes time to build in that habit of a bit of daily self-reflection. But then when you document it, now that could be in your phone, it could be in a pad or whatever. But when you document it, you're able to look back. So I'll give you a perfect example for me across life, everything in life. I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week in 2012, 2013, something like that. And in fact, it got to a question that made me put down a book for 3 months. And the question was, if you do what you want to go and do, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that question, I'd never thought about it. And we had a young baby, and it impacted me so much. It made me so sad that I couldn't continue reading it, right? And I wrote it down. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible, right? And I was like, it's not going to happen. But actually, that negative visualization was quite powerful for me, because then that set me on a journey of discovery. But the zoom out piece is underlined by patience, right? Because like you say, you eat healthy for one day, you'll see nothing. But if you're proactively patient, where you're doing the right things day in, day out, you'll bear fruit. An Aristotle quote I love, which is, patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Absolutely holds true, right? And delayed gratification is probably the best way of explaining that. So the zoom out mentality is essentially this: we're caught up in the day-to-day all the time. All we see is the daily strife, the ups and downs. When you zoom out, what you'll generally see is progress. And if you don't think it's progress, do something like, very simply, if you've got a mortgage, where's your mortgage balance from where it was a year ago? That's progress. And that's because you've been working hard to pay it off. If it's a project like what you're talking about, look at how far you've come from it, right? I've got a buddy who spent 18 months having his house rebuilt. And every time we get together for a few months, he would talk me through what's progressing. He'd show me the picture, and I'll be like, mate, that's amazing. And he's like, it doesn't feel like it. And I'll be like, just have a think about where you were 3 months ago. Yeah. Right? And he was like, yeah, but it's not done yet. So again, going back to the negative, and I'm like, yourself on the back for what you have done, right? Because not a lot of people do that enough. And I'm not saying you got to, go around high-fiving everyone all of the time. I mean, give yourself a high five now and then, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Yeah, right? You've got to give yourself props. So yeah, if in doubt, zoom out. And most of us live in doubt most of the time. So You know, at the end of each day, just look at it and say, what was great about today? And when I say look at it, probably the greatest thing for you to do is shut your eyes and just think, what happened today? And start from the beginning, and you'll realize, wow, I actually had a really productive day, a really fun day, a really fruitful day. And it will just turn your life upside down.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really, really powerful that you just touched upon was you mentioned the high fiving. And I think the celebrating small wins, I think in this day and age, you've got social media, right?
Yep.
And I will go and achieve something. Let's just, because I've been doing it a lot recently, let's just talk about fitness. And I'll do a long run. And I think, brilliant. I'm so proud of myself. I've done the longest run I've ever done. And then I log on to social media and I see someone's done 20K more than me. And I think, well, it's not that good then, is it? You know, and I think that can be a bit demoralizing for people, but I think it's important that they look at their own progress and the small wins for themselves. My fiance had an example where I was doing a lot of running and I came home and she'd ran an extra kilometer. And for her, that was a big deal to run an extra kilometer. Yeah. But I think she felt like she couldn't really celebrate that in front of me because of the level that I was doing. But I don't think that's right. I think it's really, really important to celebrate the small wins, no matter what that progress is for yourself. Yeah. Because those little bits of progress, they're only going to add up to more progress.
It's all relative. And like you say, it's down to the individual. Comparison is the thief of joy. If all you do is compare yourself to everybody else, you forget about who you are. Compare yourself to yourself. Compare yourself to where you were yesterday, last month, last year. And what you'll realize is that you've evolved, right?
And what makes you happy.
Absolutely. This is where social media... I've got love-hate with social media, right? I got rid of Instagram years ago and Facebook because I realized that if I spend half an hour a day on Instagram, it's something like a week a year, a week of your year, scrolling through your phone, looking at other people's lives, or whatever it might be. And I get it. People might listen to this and go, yeah, but you know, I love it and everything else. Great. Good for you. Does it make you actually any better? Yeah. Is what I would ask. Yeah. So comparison's a thief of joy. Celebrating small wins, absolutely. Micro wins even, right? People talk about. How about this? Celebrating failures. Right? So there's a client of mine whose team decided that on a Friday, they'll celebrate wins, but what they'll also do is celebrate failures because failures are learnings. And if one, and this is why I say to teams, if one of us learns, all of us learn. We've got to share that learning. So, you know, if you've tripped up, or if you haven't failed enough, you haven't tried enough, right? So for me, celebrate the small wins, but also celebrate the learnings because again, we don't really think about learning anymore. When I came out of uni, I was like, I'm not doing any structured studying ever again. Yeah. And then I got to a point in my career where it was like, the only way for me to evolve beyond my career and go do something else is to sit down and study. And it was so uncomfortable because I was surrounded by these HR professionals. Yeah. And in my mind, I was a complete novice. I was so out of my depth. But I loved it because each of those people taught me a ton of stuff that I didn't know. And there has to be that shift in mindset as well, right? If you go into a circumstance where you're feeling closed and you're feeling negative or you're feeling a bit self-conscious, you'll never get the outcome that you could have if you go in there and you're just like, look, I'm just a human and I'm a sponge and someone in this room is going to teach me something new that I don't know already, right?
It's your mentality. You're going to learn something new more than likely.
Oh, yeah. And every day as well, right? You're going to learn something new every day.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I try to do is interesting. You spoke about social media and the way you described it then, because there was a time where I wasted time scrolling like everyone else. And what I did is I wiped a load of followings that I was following that weren't doing me any good and made sure I only followed things that were inspiring, motivating, and actually I try and use it to my advantage.
Yes.
So so sometimes I might be sat on the sofa and, you know, you might have a day where you feel a little bit sorry for yourself. And actually I do have a scroll and I think I've got to get to work. And that works for me. Yeah. And using those tools on social media to actually flip it and look at things that's only going to give you a positive mindset, I think it's been really powerful for myself anyways.
Yeah, you've got to use it as a tool, right? You know, I talked to our daughter about that and She blows me away, some of the stuff that she comes out with. She goes, yeah, I've been listening to some podcasts. I was like, really? She was like, yeah, this lady was talking about discipline, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And to use these things as a tool as opposed to these things being used against you.
Yeah.
And what I think most people, even if they know about it, they don't care because of the dopamine hits, is look at who's behind creating a lot of those apps and actually what the methodology is. And it's to get you hooked. Right. And to steal your attention, your focus. So when I go back to the discipline equation, what are you focusing on? You need to focus on your whats and your whys. You need to focus on how to turn your obstacles into your way forward. And you need to focus on those daily habits that are going to get you to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
So that's, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, but that's discipline again.
Yeah.
Like to delete Instagram off my phone.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, what am I going to replace it with? Because that's another thing. If you're going to do something that's going to save you time or is going to create capacity in your day, what are you going to fill it with? Because a lot of people then just say, all right, I can just chill out for another half an hour. Okay, if that's what you want to do, fair enough. But actually, I replaced it with Duolingo. Start learning a bit more Russian because my wife is Russian spoken. And just make it a bit more constructive. Again, you need time to switch off though. Because rest and recovery is a massive part.
I struggle with.
That's switching off.
I struggle with, yeah.
And last night I got to about 10:15, and I said to my wife, like, she runs her own business from home. I run my own business from home. My daughter's got really proactive, got loads going on. And it gets to like 10:15, and we're just like getting out of the kitchen. We've been, really constructive. And I said, I'm just going to switch off, and I'm going to switch my brain off, which basically means put on a little bit of rubbish TV or something like that. That isn't going to focus my mind elsewhere. Than thinking about, what am I going to talk to Max about on the podcast tomorrow? What am I going to talk to his team about? So it's diverting that attention, but it's knowing what works for you. Having the awareness, the self-awareness that you need to do that is great. Having the self-discipline that do something about it takes it to the next level.
Yeah. So someone told me something once, a bit of a tip to try and give myself a bit more time and not be too indulged and zoomed in, if you like, in everything that I was doing. And they told me that in the week in my diary, I'm still a bit old school and I still write in a physical diary.
Love it.
My appointments and my meetings and stuff. And they said each week in a meeting, a made up meeting to give yourself time. And I think they used the example of John Smith. And said put in on every Monday afternoon, for example, between 10 and 2 or 10 and 12, you're meeting with John Smith. So right, you've got to stick to that. Now, actually, give yourself some free time to... Have you got any tips for people similar to that you can help them with structure, discipline, motivation? What would your tip be to those listening?
Very simply, stick a rock in your diary. Exactly what you're talking about. I call it the rock. And a lot of people, I call it the rock. But a lot of people will be familiar with a video online of a lecturer. He's got a jar and he puts a bunch of golf balls in it. And then he puts a bunch of pebbles in it, then a bunch of sand, right? So the golf balls are your rocks. And those rocks, and I say this to leaders on the leadership programs that I train on, putting a rock in your diary to create capacity to focus on the high value tasks for you. So for me, for example, that rock is, setting up lunch for my daughter, because I could never do that when I was working, right, full time, or having a morning with my wife like I had yesterday, highlighting my week. But it's putting that rock in the diary. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. If you don't schedule it, it will never happen. So what are your priorities? Scheduling your priorities, right? You can use that time for whatever you want. But there's an entrepreneur that I work with. He's a great friend of mine. And he sent me a message this morning, right? A couple of years ago when we were doing some coaching, and he would say, "No, I've got to get more flexible physically. No, more flexibility mentally." I was like, "Do you ever do any yoga?" Never. And I was like, right, I'm taking you to hot yoga specifically, right? And we went, and he had a transformative experience. He said he was almost hallucinating, and he met God. I kid you not. It was a massive thing for him. And he texted me this morning, goes, "Let's get another hot yoga session in. I need it." And I was like, I gave him a date. He's booked it in. We're off to it. But what I say to him as well is create that space in your diary for you. Most people, it's before the day really begins. But I would say stick a rock in the diary, have the discipline to stick to it. So it's creating boundaries.
Yeah.
You talked about separating the emotion from the situation, that boundary, right? The same applies to anything else in life. You've got to create boundaries for yourself, and you have to communicate it, and then you have to live by it.
Yeah.
So for example, don't bring your phone into the bedroom, or don't have a TV in your bedroom. Your bedroom's for two things: sleeping, and I'll let you use your imagination for the other thing, right? But it's things like that. And when I go into large corporates and I ask people who sends emails in bed at night, and loads of people raise their hands, and I'm like, what's that doing to your personal life?
Yeah.
What does your partner think when you're sitting there? If you've got a partner, you're lucky enough to have one who wants to be in the same bed with you, sitting there, and you're sending emails about whatever KPIs at 11 o'clock. What are you going to be?
Your own mental. And I was away just in Poland a few days ago, and I was having a look around before I did this triathlon, and I was wearing my Garmin watch. It's monitoring my heart rate and all the rest of it. And I've got it set up so I get notifications. And then I'm looking down the street, and all of a sudden I'm replying to emails because Garmin, email. Yeah. And then I had to step back a little bit and be like, right, I need to do this. I'm on this mission, and I'll deal with that after. Other people can deal with that,
You do have to catch yourself. And I think, again, that's that self-awareness thing. It's being aware that you're doing it. And do you know what? I did that, I think, maybe a couple of years ago. I was walking home from the gym, and I was responding to an email, doing something that I tell my daughter not to do, right? Yeah. So, we all get things wrong as a failing on my part. And I tripped over and hit the deck, right? And I was like, I just started laughing to myself. So I was like, when was the last time you tripped over and hit the deck? Probably when I was drunk, whenever. Yeah. But also, what have you just done? You've just done what you've been saying to your daughter. You shouldn't do that. It's not safe and all of that sort of thing. So I was laughing at myself for basically being an idiot. And I called myself and I was like, put the phone away. And actually, the phone is a very interesting thing, right? I was listening to Simon Cowell on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, and he was talking about he hates phones. He hasn't got a phone. He doesn't have a cell phone. Imagine that, right? Multi-million, decamillion.
My first thought is he's lying.
Might well be, right? Yeah. But it's interesting. But there's been loads of studies around phones and how many times we touch our phones every day. But ultimately, that it's becoming part of who we are. And my daughter was telling me about a friend of hers who's on her phone like 10 hours a day. I'm like, yeah, but she's at school. So hang on, how can you be on the phone 10 hours a day? Not even on my phone 10 hours a week. And the phone is a brain drain. So if we had our phones out in front of us now, part of your subconscious will be looking at you, Max, going, touch me.
Yeah.
What's going on out there in the world? Yeah. Actually, it doesn't matter. I got home last night after picking my daughter up. My wife's phone was in the hallway. And I'd been gone for an hour and a half and it hadn't moved. Maybe 2 hours. And I went up to see her, and she'd just been lost in doing what she loves, which is all around fashion and stuff. She had been in a flow. Complete flow state, and she didn't need a phone, she didn't need music or anything else. She was like, oh, have you seen my phone? She'd just completely forgotten about it. So, it's a real challenge. It's a great tool, but I also think tools like that are so easily abused. Yeah. And we often forget that we're in control of it. It's not in control of us. So listen, my phone goes on flight mode before bed. Yeah, it's my alarm, but I tend to wake up before it, all of that kind of stuff. So it's putting the right disciplines in place, the right boundaries in place. And that's for everything, right? You kind of need boundaries. Otherwise, you just lost. You end up getting lost. Yeah. And then at some point in your life, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to go, where am I? Yeah. Who am I?
Yeah. Yeah. No, great advice. And, some really, really good gems in there. I could talk all day to you and all night about it, to be honest.
Oh,
but I'm going to move on to some quick fire questions I've got for you at the end, if you're ready for those.
Yes. Yeah.
So, number one, what book are you currently reading, and what book would you recommend?
I'm listening to a couple of books at the moment. One called Drive by Daniel Pink, which is all about fundamentally intrinsic motivators for people. I'm also listening to a book called Awareness. I can't remember who the author is, but it's fundamentally a series of lectures and an explanation of to people about awareness of consciousness. And then a book that I picked back up, which is Coaching for Performance. So this is more of a business book by Sir John Whitmore, because it's the to me, from all the business books that I've read, it's the best, right? It talks about coaching, it talks about interdependence, it talks about all sorts of stuff to do with culture as well. So from a business standpoint, I'd say that's probably it.
Yeah.
Coaching for Performance. Personally though, my favorite book is Meditations from Marcus Aurelius. It's not an easy read, right? Because it's in ancient language, and it was never meant to be published. It's his memoirs, it's his journal.
Right.
But this is 2,000 years ago. Fundamentals. And you consider the situation this guy's in. He's the emperor of Rome. He's going through wars. He's trying to create peace for his people, his empire. And there's many an entry in it where he wakes up and he's like, he just wants to stay under the covers. He goes, but are you made to stay under these warm sheets? Yeah. Or what is your purpose, essentially? There's so much wisdom in it that I just have to revisit it every year. One other as well, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl was a neuroscientist, neurologist, ended up in Auschwitz and some other concentration camps, watched horrendous atrocities, see his whole family get sent off to the gas chambers. And he survived it because he was a doctor and they needed, an MD of some sort. But when he came out, he did two things. He created a form of therapy called logotherapy, but he also wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And there's so much wisdom in it. I listened to it in a day during a pandemic, clearing out my garage, and I was crying through it. But there's great nuggets in there, like between stimulus and your response, there is a gap. And in that gap, you have the choice to choose how you respond, and in that choice is your freedom. Something along those lines. And what he really says is, and a lot of people talk to me about, I don't know, what's the meaning of life? Where's the meaning in my life? And I think, the clear message that I get from that book is, you don't go out and find meaning, you create meaning, and you create that meaning day in, day out based on your interactions with people, your purpose and your intentions. And what that actually does is that's what creates legacy, right? And legacy isn't necessarily just what you leave behind. A really good friend of mine is writing a book about it. It's not about what you leave behind with everyone. It's actually about what you imprint on everyone through every interaction, right? So a part of my legacy with everyone today was what we did today. And I'm very conscious of that as well, right? So long-winded answer, Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, and Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Great. I'll have to definitely pick those up.
Yeah.
For sure. Morning routine. What's the first thing you do in the morning to start your day right?
Apart from the hygiene stuff, is I won't drink the pint straight away, but it's breathing technique. It's just oxygenate the body, right? Massively wakes me up. If it's sunny, if it's dry, I should say, I'll be out in my front yard on a crappy old deck chair, listening to a bit of Wim Hof and doing this breathing exercise. And what I find happens, like, it's actually hard work. What I find happens is when I've done it, I feel like I can go do anything. So that's the first thing that I will do. After that, at the moment, it's that, and then it's get some electrolytes down me, and just get on with my day. Get out of the house, really. Get moving. So it could be a walk, it could be a run. I haven't been well over the last couple of months, but before that, I was doing everything. I was like, the first thing I would do is get up, go downstairs. I'd have a towel waiting for me downstairs, and I'd get in the cold tub, right? For anything from a minute onwards. And after that, that's it. The day's, it's on. You've already won. You're alive. And then it's the breathing, then it's the meditation and all that sort of stuff.
Love it.
So habit stacking. That's what I call it. What James Clear talks about. Yeah.
Good stuff. Number 3, your favorite motivational quote.
There's so many, right? There's so many. I think the one that I keep going back to is easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life, because I took the easy choices for too long. And I realized that it made me miserable. And it also made me realize to look at life from a different perspective, which is when I'm old and grey and I'm on my deathbed, when I'm looking down the barrel of a choice, is this a choice that I'm going to respect? And inevitably, if the outcome of those two choices is going to be roughly the same, go for the harder one.
Yeah.
Because you're going to learn more, you're going to grow more, you're going to develop more, and it's going to be a choice that you're not going to regret.
Yeah, you're going to look back and you're glad that you at least gave it a go.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm signing up for an Ironman.
I'm signing you up. Next one, number 4. How do you unwind after a long day?
One of the best things that is in my life are my girls, right? My wife and my daughter, just having dinner together.
Just love that.
Listening to my wife and my daughter riff about anything, and we always end up laughing. And it might get to a point where I'm thinking, oh, maybe she should be getting ready for bed, but we're so into it. We'll just, like last night, we just sat there till 10, right? We sat there for a good hour, whatever. That is probably the number one thing. Beyond that, I'm blessed. My wife has been a massage therapist for 20 years. And if I'm lucky,
Comes in handy.
comes in handy. So if I really am struggling to switch off, face massage,
Nice.
I'm dead to the world after that.
You got it sorted there.
Yeah, lucky.
We've already touched upon this one, so I'm gonna ask you only for one. But you're the most influential person that has had an impact on your life. One person.
My mum.
Amazing.
Yeah, without any shadow of a doubt. Smartest person I've ever met, smartest person I've ever known. And she, I am majorly who she was. And I'm kind of proud of that, right? A lot of people will be like, oh, my wife and my daughter will say, oh, you sound like grandma. And I'll be like, good. Yeah. I really like that. I admire that. Yeah. So yeah, my mum.
Good. Great answer. Best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Tough one. I'll tell you what, Steve Rush, who's a great mentor of mine, said to me when I asked him before I left the whole banking world, I said, look, any words of advice, any sage? And he said, be everything to everyone. He said, look, that's really hard, but don't turn down an opportunity. Just learn how to accomplish it and learn how to serve your clients. The tricky part of being everything to everyone is to not forget yourself in all of that. Because if you're everything to everyone, you're nobody to you. So be everything to everyone, but be selective in that as well.
Good answer. Next one, number 7, your go-to app or tool for productivity. What would be your go-to?
It's my calendar, man.
Yeah.
I've got a work calendar. We've got a family calendar, but it's the calendar because if you don't schedule it in, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So generally, my to-do list is already scheduled into my calendar.
Yeah.
That's it. And so, time is your only currency, and your calendar is a representation of your time of life. So to me, structuring your days is fundamental. Yeah. And that's the compartmentalization, that's the discipline. But calendar is a really simple one.
Great. Number 8, what is your favorite hobby or pastime?
I really want to say basketball, but I don't play it as much as I just don't play it as frequently as I should.
Yeah.
Or could or woulda. But I was watching basketball. But yeah, always, I don't know what it is, but I just love it. That's without doubt, that's my favorite thing. Like, basketball's something that I would actually stay up for.
Yeah.
Basketball.
Great. Number 9, I want to talk about success traits and ask you, what is the most important, do you think, trait for someone to be successful?
For anybody in any sector, in any game, I'll be disciplined, right? As I said, discipline's the foundation to every good thing in your life. So if you want success financially, you need to have financial discipline, right? You need to put the right structures in place to create that financial success and freedom down the road. If you want physical success, you need to have a disciplined, structured routine. Whatever it is that you're aiming towards in life, the fun, motivated or not, skilled or not, capable or not, the only thing that will move the dial is your level of self-discipline. So that would be it for me.
There it is, discipline.
Yeah.
And then finally, number 10, what is the next big thing, goal, project, event in your life that you're most looking forward to?
Launch of my book.
Wow.
Yeah. So, as I say, I'm building case studies out around it, but I came up with this idea last year around the discipline equation. It doesn't exist. And it's not to say that I'm a master of discipline, but one thing that I understand is how to build more discipline. And it sounds really, I think the connotation of the word is very negative, because people believe that discipline is something that's imposed upon you. But actually, when you reverse that and you impose discipline upon yourself, what ends up happening is you end up getting better. So most people, the way that I talk about it to most people is, most people think they are not very disciplined. But how many days have they gotten up and gone into work when they didn't want to? How many days did they get up and go into school when they didn't really want to? How many days have they kept showing up? That's discipline. Yeah. And it's something as fundamental as that, to realize, actually, I can do this. I have got this within me. That's the big thing that I'm working on.
Great.
And figuring out a path to publication. But like I say, use cases, right? I know for sure, like my wife and I have been watching a lot of Dragon's Den and Shark Tank recently. Yeah. And I know for sure that if I sit in front of you, if I sit in front of Stephen Bartley or anyone else, is like, okay, prove it. Now I can prove it based on myself, right? My health, my wealth, my happiness. But actually applying it to other people, that's where the use cases come in. So I had a good buddy of mine who's a freelancer call me on Friday, and he's like, look, I'm stuck. I just need a reset. And I was like, indulge me for an hour, will you? So we went through this discipline equation together. Sends me a message today. He's like taken 1,000 steps forward. He's like, I've done more than I've ever done before. And it's all from that hour that we spent on Friday. So next big thing is the book. And whenever that happens, mate, I'll be knocking on your door saying, Max, I want to come and talk about it.
Definitely, 100%. I look forward to that. And then just finally, then, thank you so much for coming on and traveling here today. How can people get in touch with you to this podcast?
corporatesmarts.co.uk. Me out on LinkedIn, which is really the only social media that I use, because it's linked professionally. Stephen Quinn on LinkedIn. I'm sure we can probably put a QR code up on screen or something like that. Yeah. Those are the key ways. I'm not going to put my number out there just in case. But those are the ways, mate. And listen, thank you for having me on. Thank you for entrusting me to spend some time with your team today. It's been a real pleasure.
No, it's been brilliant, and I look forward to it again in the future. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Max.
Cheers, Steve.